The best thing about life is the ability to continue to grow and get better and frankly enjoy each day more than the last. And sometimes we get a little caught up in moments and let that sour some notes more than they should be. And I think that happened to me last week. I started putting my expectations of people's behavior on top of them and with very little thought as to the right thing to do and frankly how to be an adult in the situation. Acted kind of like a brat last week. So I want to open up the conversation and I apologize to anybody that felt attacked in my conversation last week. I got a little unhinged and got a little frustrated and started calling out certain teams, and that's not the right way for me to behave. So, first and foremost, I just want to start with that and say, if there's anyone who felt like my comments were out of line or aggressive or went at them in a way that frankly was unfair, completely reasonable. My apologies. Drop me a note. I'm happy to talk to you about it in person. But look, I got frustrated and like I said, I want to be the adult in the room, but I don't always do a good job of that. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that in terms of where things were in terms of cutting off last week's episode. But anyways, couple extra days, and we've gotten through almost the entirety of the third round. It was a good space to kind of leave off last week because, as predicted, the draft turned into a bit of a wild west where any consensus on picks has completely evaporated. Um, and the runs are just magnificent. 5 or 6 defensive ends at the end of the second, 7 or 8 wide receivers in the middle to end of the third. It's incredible where these things are happening. It's really fun to see the different valuations on picks versus round versus position and that trade off. And teams drafting for need versus teams just taking what they see as the safest or best player available. So I have to echo what you're saying, RJ. I still have a few more picks and I'm stressed, but you seem pretty stress free.
It feels fantastic to not have any more picks left. Just to occasionally log on and see if any picks have been made with no worry about when my next pick is. Yeah, it's a joyful thing.
So this is a really fun part of. I feel like it happens most every draft, and how long it lasts is a little bit different in terms of whether it's a startup or a rookie draft or a mixed, dispersal draft or whatever. There's a run in there where every single pick that hits the clock, people are trying to trade up for. And I don't mean just one person going player to player or team to team to team trying to trade up. I get the sense that anytime anyone's been on the clock since about the 211, they've had 6 or 7 offers come in from teams trying to move into that spot of either people trying to move up, people trying to move in, or frankly, people just, trying to consolidate or just any kind of move whatsoever. And that's just got to be fun because let's be honest, as frustrated as we get with certain teams about the offers they send, it's fun to receive trade offers. And in that moment, you are incredibly popular. There are 5 or 6 people standing in front of you, jumping up and down with their hands up, yelling, pick me, pick me, pick me. And if you don't pick one of them, you get to choose from a massive pool of players who will help your team, whether it's a little bit, a lot of it, or not a bit. All of them have that potential. So, again, it's nothing like what real GMs have to go through, but it's a lot of fun to be in that position.
It is fun. Uh, I know a good portion of us complain about people being on the clock, but I am very much one of those when I get on the clock and then I am showered with trade offers. I'm like, oh, I get it. I kind of want to stay in the spotlight as long as possible.
Mhm.
But I do agree with you. Like around 211 is where we started getting wild, and I got a lot of enjoyment out of watching the chat because people are sending offers, people are trying to trade up, but like every time a pick would go through, just to see like the group chat's reaction, like, oh, it wasn't my guy, I'm still going strong, or like people that would drop out like, oh no, my guy got taken, guess I'm not sending any more offers.
Yep. And again, we'll start at the 211 and just kind of go down. And I think we've got enough picks being made that we're just going to keep going pick by pick. We might not go super deep into them because, frankly, I don't have super deep knowledge on everybody at this point. I think we have a lot of information on the bigger names. I think definitely there are some players that I felt might have been a reach, but at the same time, like a week ago, these guys were no shit top 15 picks. Not a week ago, but you know what I mean. A week before the draft.
Yeah.
Um, so look, it's a question of hey, these guys should fall, but at what point do you say? I'll steal a quote from Player Profiler. I don't hate players. I hate ADPs. Like, at what point does the ADP go from a reach to equivalent to a value? And I think, like I said, we saw a lot of different combinations of players, draft capital, position, and accessibility to being a starter in that role. So I think we both said the 211. I think the reason we picked that is because we were waiting on 211 to be on the clock while I was on last time. And Browns went with Harold Fannin, Cleveland's tight end. Uh, I think a max school tight end, great measurables, performed really well. Slots in behind Njoku, but look, that offense is just trying to compile weapons right now. We're not really sure who's going to be quarterback. We're not really sure what they're going to play. We just know they've got a bunch of guys, Judkins, Sampson, Ford at running back. They've got Judy. They've got Tillman. They've got a bunch of others at wide receiver. They now have Njoku and Fannin at tight end. Pickett, Sanders, Gabriel, Flacco at quarterback. I don't know what the hell these guys are doing, but according to Myles Garrett, they have a plan.
Yep.
Um,
It's probably just accumulate playmakers.
I've brought up the analogy from South Park of the Underwear Gnomes a lot over the last week. And Cleveland, not our Cleveland, real life Cleveland, feels very much like an Underwear Gnome situation. Step one, acquire playmakers on offense and defense. Step two, question mark. Step three, win the Super Bowl. I look forward to step two. I think Cleveland does too. But again, pre-draft value perspective, I think this is dead on where I would have Fannin. I think landing spot, it's going to require some patience, but Browns has Goddard who can carry the load for him this year. And if Fannin takes a year or two to come into his own, he's got the talent to be pretty impressive and a nice ad for a long term. So taking that position here versus one of the guys who might have earlier access to a starting position, I think Fannin is one of the more talented guys in the draft.
Yep, I would agree with that. So many tight ends taken early. I can't really say that it was much of a reach. I don't mind the player, don't mind the landing spot, like the actual NFL landing spot. From what I've seen, Njoku's name has been thrown around as a potential trade target. I've also heard that he will probably give up some targets to Fannin because they do intend on getting him out there and on the field relatively early. So yeah, fantastic pick. Probably the last of the tight ends that really has an opportunity to be on the field in their rookie year. Might be able to say that about the next one, but I think that there's a bit of a drop off after Fannin.
That's fair. And I'm probably a little higher, I guess. We'll just go to the next pick. Jaguars taken at 212. Elijah Aurora going to Seattle. I don't know. I just have a soft spot for Miami tight ends. So, it's lazy analysis, but sometimes lazy analysis is still analysis. I think this for sure is that break point on tight end. I think they were drafted within a pick of each other in the real NFL draft too. But yeah, we had a nice little run of tight ends in the first. And this kind of lops off the edge of that run in the second. Jags is an interesting landing spot for Aurora because he has Musgrave, he has Brenton Strange, he now adds Aurora, and I think he's got one other tight end of note on his team. And this really leads to almost a goose type approach to the position of I may not have that stud that everyone looks at and says, wow, they've got X. Those 3 or 4 guys, though, I wouldn't be shocked if he's got, in the top 10 to 12 of tight end scoring in the league this year with that combination. And just, doesn't have to be one big guy. It could be, 3 guys combining to something big.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. 3 guys that all can find themselves into a pretty, I wouldn't say a prominent role, but a decent sized role. Something where like it'll just be hot hand every week and you will have basically 3 starting tight ends.
Yep. So when I say the Wild West, to nobody's surprise, I know and I believe 3 or 4 other owners that are often referred to as the usual suspects were trying to trade in pretty aggressively from about this point, even to the current pick. So when I talk about the run earlier of a stretch of the draft where everybody is trying to move in, I know there's always those picks early on, but at some point you just kind of settle in and say, hey, they're going to pick, or you get the 1 or 2 picks because you don't really know which direction to go. But we've reached that fun balance at this point where you feel really good about 3 or 4 players, but you have no idea what order they're going to go in. Do I have to move into the 216? Do I have to get up to the 212? Can I wait till the 222? Is there going to be a run and they're all gone? Like you lose a lot of that certainty when you hit the great unknown like this. So this is where, again, I love it, and things are wild, and we're going to be all over the place the next few picks, and it's just going to be fun. So Dolphins continues his trend of picking guys who are blocked to start, but could be in a really good offense, a really good position if things break right. So Jarquez Hunter from Auburn, I believe it is, going to the Los Angeles Rams, going 213. Again, running back in a Sean McVay system. Kyron Williams is saying this is the year he's going for over 1,500 yards. Blake Corum, darling of last year's draft, still there. But again, a prominent role in this system is incredibly valuable. So Hunter might have to just kind of sit there and see how things break. Maybe he's an injury away. That injury hits, he's immediately a first-round pick in terms of valuation. That's just where it is. Until then, he gets to sit, simmer, marinate, learn the game, and probably just hold value here. Now, Would I have picked him at this pick? No, I had other players rated higher. But again, it's that Wild West where based off of camp, based off of health, based off of situation, I'm probably going to be wrong in either direction. He may never see the field, and this is a complete miss, or by training camp, Jarquez Hunter is the apple of Sean McVay's eye and going to split carries or in a three-headed backfield with Corum and Williams, despite what Kyren Williams is saying. Like, the range seems all over the place here. So Dolphins has a lot of rolls to the dice at this, and I guess another fun role for him to make.
Yeah, I was a lot more optimistic than I am on the pick.
Well, I'm trying to be more optimistic. Like I said, I went somewhat rogue on the last podcast, so trying to be a bit more positive and silver lining on things here. I think people appreciate Dark Mike every once in a while, but we'll keep going as long as we can here.
Yeah.
Titans pulling the trigger. Everyone's wondering when he was going to go. And again, Titans is another team. No illusions of trying to compete. It's, there's those players who go to the craps table and bet the pass line. There's those who are assholes and bet the don't pass line. And the people who go up there and make spot bets on boxcars or snake eyes or hard eights or things like that. The complete degenerates where odds are stacked against you, but when they hit, you win big. And that's exactly what this pick is. Shedeur Sanders, 214. Look, we don't have to talk about his fall in the draft. Everybody who's followed anything knows about this, and we're not NFL, commentators here. If the talent's really there and the work ethic's there and he steps into it, there's no one of consequence in front of him. Like, this is the prove it situation. Watson, they're going to let go as soon as they can. Flacco is a 1 or 2 year placeholder at best. Pickett is fighting for his NFL life. Gabriel was drafted before him, but is undersized and a bit of a transfer jump around, and also a non-day one quarterback. So it's his if he dedicates himself to it. But the question's always been the attitude. And is it gonna work out that way? So now he gets a chance to prove it. And if Titans is right, second round quarterback that's probably gonna take a year or two to get to the spot. Like, not a bad pick to have at 214, and especially if you have to extend them based off of some of the scoring based off the first year or two. Or by this time next year, Arch Manning is on his way to Cleveland, and, well, thanks, Shedeur. Welcome to the trash heap.
So that's a very possible scenario. I think Cleveland would have liked a redo on their third round pick had they known what they were going to get in the fifth. So, I definitely think that Shedeur has an opportunity to see some snaps there. I like him a little bit more than Gabriel, who's taken 2 rounds before him. So, like you said with the last pick, I don't necessarily agree with this spot, but I think it's a fine player to take in the mid-second.
So, again, I do enjoy going to X for analysis post-draft, especially when they show clips of front office or draft rooms or things like that, or even GMs sharing their point of view on things. And there's a really good clip making the rounds from Eric DaCosta, the Ravens GM, where he talks about the paper from the Penn professor and others looking at the loser tax, I think they call it, which basically says there's an assumption in the draft that some people are smarter than others, know more than others, or make better decisions than others. And some of that may be true, but when you're talking about a position with this many eyes, this much money going around, and the stakes that go on in the NFL draft, that's a bit of a fallacy. Everybody who's in their spot earned it one way or the other. And to say you have more information than somebody else, probably not. Do you have a better decision-making process? That's certainly possible. But the only way to win in those situations is to have more rolls of the dice. That, even the first-round quarterbacks only hit half the time. So when you're talking about the most important position in professional sports, and you're talking about the greatest value to a franchise in professional sports of a performing quarterback on a rookie deal, it's never a bad thing to invest multiple picks in the position. Because if I have a 40% chance between Pickett and Flacco that they're productive quarterbacks from this year, and by productive, I'm talking league average. I'm not talking anything above that. If Gabriel ups that by another 15%, and Shador ups that by another 5%, worth it. Because if I can get a 5th-round pick that I'm paying $1 million a year to, that is quarterbacking my offense, I now have $249 million to spend on everything else. And that is an advantage that anyone would kill for. It's why I love every year that the Steelers took a 2nd-round receiver, saying, I'm not paying these guys 10, 12, 15 million, 20 million to keep them. I'm going to draft them. I'm going to develop them. I'm going to use them for 3 years. And then I'm going to let them go to the market and get the comp pick for them. And then I'm going to get the next guy. And then I'm going to get the next guy. And I'm going to keep doing that because there's a market inefficiency here that lets me continue to earn a value and gain a positional advantage by doing things the smart way and playing the market the right way. So I think there's a decision-making improvement, but the other piece of this is getting as many bites at the apple as possible. And I love the Browns taking 2 quarterbacks, saying, we don't have one, so why not take 2 and see if either of these guys work out? And if not, we'll try again next year. It's why you take RG3 and Kirk Cousins. It's why you draft Russ Wilson when you just paid Matt Flynn $50 million. If my options are Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, and I am damn near not sold on anyone not named Cam Ward in this draft, then I'm taking 2, maybe 3 of
them. I agree with taking rookie quarterbacks, and I agree with the Joel Klatt approach of taking a new one every year. I just don't know if I want to double down on 2 in the same year, especially like this kind of a class.
That's fair. But again, I think Sanders is a great dice roll for Titans. It's going to be somebody that either pays dividends or misses for him, or frankly, he's able to transition the risk early on during camp. Maybe he gets a really nice run during one of the preseason games. Someone sold, he gets a 1st-round pick for him. Pick's already paid off at that point.
Yep.
Other side of it, Bill's taking Jalen Milroe, same idea. I think this is really fun because Seattle is getting a lot of credit for a nice little bait and switch where they got draft compensation for trading Geno and then replaced him with Sam Darnold. And they got draft compensation for trading DK and replaced him with Cooper Kupp. So, hey, I'm trading guys for draft compensation. I'm going to the free agency market to replace them. And, I'm drafting guys behind them in case I'm wrong. And the fun thing about Jalen Milroe, again, no pressure to start this year. Perfect for a team who's looking to not score a lot of points like Bills. There is a very real situation that Jalen Milroe goes into 2026 as the starter for the Seattle Seahawks. Sam Darnold, they can get out of his contract for 1 year. How? Nobody's sure if he's the guy there.
Howell got traded.
Who do you get traded to?
Minnesota?
All right. Well, still, his path to starter is not incredibly blocked.
Yeah, Minnesota.
All right. Well, still, his path to starter is not fully blocked despite Darnold's year last year. If he struggles, Milrow's going to get a look.
Oh, for sure.
And if he steps into that role just from his pure rushing ability, he is going to be an every week. Worst case scenario, you get something like Justin Fields, and we've talked about him this offseason. He's QB 15 when he plays. Even if he doesn't play well, he's QB 15 just because of his rushing ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Fields is ultimately. I mean, he has failed when given the opportunity in a football sense, but like, yeah, he's maintained great value in our league, and he's still relatively productive. So I think that's a great comparison. Somebody that a year or two from now will probably retain 90% of their value just off of potential. Yeah. I hate this pick because I'm jealous. I wish I would have taken him.
Very nice way to put it.
Yeah, it was a fantastic pick. It was one of the few second-round quarterbacks that I wasn't disgusted by.
Yep. 216, Pat Bryant. Like I said, this is the fun combination of on my draft board, I had a do not draft on Pat Bryant. He goes to Denver, and again, appears to be an apple of Sean Payton's eye, which usually means a lot of good things from a fantasy production standpoint, but called the cliche police because Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, I think it's Calais Vaughn, now Pat Bryant, plus their tight ends, plus their running backs. That's a lot of players who need targets. So is everyone getting 30 to 40 targets and it's just going to be throw it to whoever's open? Or is Bryant going to beat everyone out? I don't know. And I feel like in this range that we're in still, we're still taking players who have legit shots at starting or clear paths to, every week starting positions for us. Bryant could get there, but I feel like things are just too spread out in Denver. So he wasn't a guy I really liked. He goes into a situation where he's going to get some opportunity. It doesn't just seem like very much of it. And I don't see a good path to upside because of the way that they're just continually trying to bring in more targets, more weapons, more stuff without really even designating an alpha or any form of consolidation here. So I think I don't know, not my favorite pick, but Panthers has shown the ability to find diamonds in the rough here. He's also, we've gone too long without mentioning Isaiah Spiller, so it has to be done.
I mean, I'm looking at it now, and basically all their wide receivers are the same thing. Like Cortland Sutton, Vale, Bryant, Franklin, they're all the same thing. They're like between 6'2" and 6'4", and they all kind of do everything slightly above average. He has an opportunity, but there's so many other people there. So, it's just a matter of like if he can beat them out. In Denver, the only one that stands out to me is like somebody that'll have a real an actual role that they won't be competing with somebody over is probably Marvin Mims, and that's more as just like slot and return guy. Everything else is like wide open there, so not an unreasonable pick, but it does feel like he's buried behind a 7th rounder and a 4th rounder from last year.
Yep. Then Giants moving up, grabbing Walter Nolan, defensive tackle. I think he's a second D tackle going with Mason going earlier. Well, the talent position feels a little early to me still, but I'm not going to default him for trying to add pieces there. And I think Panthers made the point on a podcast last week that with the ability to start 3 defensive tackles and the scoring that they can do if they get a sack and the bonuses that they get, it's not a bad thing to have some depth there and a lot of guys who can score for you. So this is, again, one of those higher variance picks, it feels like. Nolan has the talent to be one of those guys who gets 6 or 7 sacks in a season. Arizona defensive scheme shuffles guys in and out and everything, especially if you can't produce, you're out of there within a year or two. So he's got the opportunity, he's got the talent. It's a question of whether it comes together. But again, still feels a little early for D tackle to me.
Yep, I agree. Not a terrible pick, like the particular player, first round defensive tackle, so it's fine. Out of the available defensive tackles, I don't know if this was the ideal one. Sure, maybe like draft capital, he was the most appealing. But Arizona just brought in a whole bunch of vets for that interior line. So he's gonna be sitting behind Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson, their first rounder from last year. Like that's their front 3. So it's kind of like, sure, if one of the 2 guys shows their age and they aren't super productive, there is an opportunity there. But out of the interior lineman taken in the first round, he is likely to be the one that has to sit.
Yeah, and look, their head coach came from the Eagles, and their philosophy is, I'm going to keep throwing guys on the field who can pressure you. So you may wear my first guys down, but my second unit is just as dangerous as my first. So that's the way Arizona's building that unit. He'll still see plenty of snaps on the field. Maybe it's only a 30 or 40% snap share in year 1. But again, if you can beat out a vet, the upside is there. Next, we had Nick Martin of the 49ers going to the Bills. So, Niners fan, the best team, and I said earlier, the best teams in the NFL draft a year ahead of need. So they give themselves time to develop the position the year before they're going to need it. You're not always going to be able to do it, but the best teams are able to do that. We're not doing that this year as a 49ers fan. We're drafting a lot of positions that are filling in positions that we lost. And we hope that we have the replacement on the roster, and this guy is going to push for a spot to either challenge or replace them by midseason. But if you look at Nick Martin, we lost Dre Greenlaw this year. We lost a number of our edge linebackers the last couple of years. We need to invest in the position. Nick Martin has that speed to play that edge position in that edge, but outside linebacker position in the slot defense. But it's going to take a minute for him to get there. So it's a nice pick by Bills, but again, I think this is a guy who, in my opinion, should go at least 10 picks later, if not into the 3rd round. But he's got time to wait on him. If he's going to take a year or 2 in San Francisco, that's just fine for the Bills.
Yep. I don't. The particular, like the player, I agree. I probably would have had him closer to the 3rd round. The particular position that he's in, I don't hate it. It's probably going to be he's a starter by necessity more than anything else. So fine to pick a guy in the mid-2nd round that'll actually see the field. It's not unreasonable to think that they're going to bring him along slowly until you look at the backup guys. And I don't think Tatum, Bethune, and Jalen Graham, those are the 2 outside linebackers that are behind him. I don't really see them as starting caliber guys. So if I have to pick, it's probably going to be him.
Well, again, and look, he's on my team, so I'm not going to flex too hard on him. But they brought in the special teams linebacker from the from the Giants, to be a placeholder or that fourth linebacker position. So it's kind of like what good teams do. Good teams to draft a year in advance. Good teams have a placeholder they feel at least okay about in each position, giving their rookies time to be able to develop and to have to go take that job from somebody. So he's going to have to go take somebody's job. He's not going to slot into the starting role there, but his speed, he can play the position that he needs to play from a physical perspective. He's just got to get up to speed quickly on it.
The 49ers should just make Richie Grant gain 20 pounds and play outside linebacker.
Yeah, there are worse ideas for us right now. 219, I think it's the second safety off the board. Malachi Starks. If Emonawari wasn't, I'd say, exuding the Legion of Boom and embracing that identity after being drafted to the Seahawks, Starks would have been the first guy off the board. Because, yeah, when has it been a bad thing when the best safety on the board goes to the Baltimore Ravens and joins an already very potent defense? I can't think of a time where that's turned out poorly.
Yep.
So, yeah. Again, second safety off the board, middle of second round. We're starting to get to that point where I feel like safety is a reasonable pick to do. And Malachi is, I think, the most talented safety in the draft. So I still think it's a bit of a reach, but I don't hate it, especially for a player like this.
Yeah, it's fine. He's stepping into a starting role, so I'm fine with it.
So this is where the draft starts to get really fun. 220, Lions take Jaden Blue. Before the draft, Blue's not on my board at all. Not in the download of prospects I got 2 months ago I've been using to build my board around, not in any of my scouting, not in any of my research I've been doing. He's nowhere. Everyone's expecting the Cowboys to take a running back in the first 2 days to plug in, and they don't. Fifth round, they come back and take Jaden Blue. And now, and again, this happens every year. But usually, like, it's a Bucky Irving who it was, okay, everyone was hyped up on him on the season. He fell off a little bit because of his performance, but talent, role, coordinator, we're happy again. We're excited again. Then we have situations like this where it's the role's great. Don't get me wrong. But look, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders are nobody's favorite running backs right now. I don't know who the hell Blue is before this. People are excited about him and excited in this role. Do I think he's more talented than either of those guys? No.
Nope. Yeah, he is very much just a product of being the Cowboys draft pick. Every beat writer's going to tell you he has an opportunity. He's going to shoot up dynasty rankings. There's a possibility, but I definitely don't see him being the Chase Brown or the Kyron Williams, where he's drafted, later, or in a situation where he's buried, where he just all of a sudden becomes a productive running back one. He is not Rico Dowdle, so I could be horribly wrong, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, and look, I know I opened the podcast, but I apologize for potentially picking on people, but I want to make an observation, and Lions give me a good opportunity to make that observation. So I apologize if this looks like I'm picking on him, but if you look at the Lions draft, he has 120, 122, he has 207, he has 220. He has Josh Allen as his quarterback. He's got a triumvirate of really good receivers, and he's got some really promising players on defense. He could have taken those 4 picks and bought a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 running backs will get you a backfield in terms of the first round. Emanuwari, like I said, I think we talked about previously, he has the opportunity to be really, really good at the safety position. I just think it's early to take a safety. And if you wanted to use a pick on that, we've seen the safety 3 last year go basically for the 219. So you take the 220 and go buy yourself whatever safety you kind of want to. And then the 207, basically the 207 or around that range is what bought Isaiah Likely during the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be highly hypocritical for me to say sometimes the best way to compete is to go trade draft picks for players, since I seem to go both ways every single year. But sometimes the right thing to do is to take advantage of rookie fever and say, hey, you know what? I've got 120 and 122. Browns has said he really wants to move one of Chase Brown or Bucky Irving. Let me go see how serious he is about that. Yeah. You know, I could use a tight end upgrade. 207. Panthers has had Ferguson or Schultz or whoever it is on his trade bait for a while. I wonder what a top 40 pick will get me. So again, people are going to say I'm saying this because I want to trade for draft picks. I love the draft. I have too much, enjoyment tied up in the draft. Fine. I enjoy it. I don't care. But I want to see teams do things that make sense for their team. And I feel like the thing that would have made some more logical sense for Lions here is trade for those players. Trade for the positions you need. Don't try and hit those with draft picks. All it's going to take is for Tootin to hit for me to be completely wrong about this take. But I think that's how Lions could have come out of this draft in a stronger position than he is.
No, I agree in the same sense. Like, those guys could hit, sure. But you're 100% correct. Like, Blue, for an example, or we could use all of them as an example. The Tootin pick could have traded down, taken him probably in the early second, and still gotten a player that sees the field this year. Could have taken the 220, which was Jaden Blue, and probably traded for one of the other Dallas guys. Like, I'd imagine, I don't know who has him, but Miles Sanders probably can't be much more expensive than that. So, like, you go buy him, you might even get a 4th round pick out of it. But I would say, like, Blue is definitely one of those that he probably lasts until the middle of the 3rd, like, if he doesn't go there. I don't hate the pick. I don't hate the idea of having the player and the potential of him actually seeing the field this year, just not with that draft capital.
And look, at some point, you're a team that makes sense to roll the dice on players hitting. And man, is it fun. When I found Puka Nacua in the 3rd and no one else had even heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, Dak Prescott was falling into the 2nd or 3rd of this draft, and I got him before everyone else did. Those are the things I say, hey, I could do this in real life because look how great I did here. And Lions did it recently. Nailed Puka Nacua, I think our 3rd round. And until he has to extend him this year, he's a wild value in this league. Like I said, it's only going to take one of these guys being a superstar, Jaden Blue being a 200-point running back this year, for me to be a cold take exposed. But again, I apologize to Lions for picking on him here. I feel like there are a lot of teams that qualify for this, where what you're doing with your team from a draft perspective doesn't fit where your team is. And when I see things that don't make sense, I say something. All right, enough picking on him. Colts taking Derek Harmon, D tackle for the Steelers, heir apparent to Casey Hayward. Love the player, love the landing spot, love the pick. Going to take some time to get on the field. Great for Colts trying to keep the points down this year, but really should be a big contributor for that defense going forward. So, to your point, if we're taking D tackles at this point, this is the guy I'm taking over Walter Nolan. But I think Colts just kind of took, hey, give me the best player available on the board right here, and he did.
Yep. Fantastic pick. Another one of those, and I'm gonna shit on this pick just like I'm gonna shit on the pick after this. Defensive tackles, probably a little early for them to go. But since there started to become a run of them or less of them available, I get it. Might as well grab them while the 4 or 5 that are like decent, that have decent opportunities. Might as well grab one of them while they're still available. And I don't think that there are very many. There's probably a handful of players, but there's not a whole lot of players outside of cornerbacks and safeties that are starting caliber that are still available in the player pool. So I like the pick.
Yeah, and I mean, you backed it up with Kenneth Grant, the other first-round D tackle here, to kind of end the tier of these are the highly talented guys who have really good draft capital with them. Miami spent a first-round pick on Grant when others thought that there are other players they would pick before him available, especially players that could help that offense. And they went with Grant. Look, big guy, fits the defensive structure well, exactly what they need down there to free up and keep their edge rushers clean. So the kind of guy who is just good, he's going to end up with 40 or 50 tackles. He's going to end up with 5 or 6 sacks just because he's so damn big. He's going to force his way into the backfield. But again, it's the end of that tier for that defensive tackle. So you find yourself in the right spot again, RJ.
Yep. I feel like he is a similar player to a Christian Wilkins. Like you said, very much, 40, 50 tackles it doesn't seem like a crazy idea. Where he's going to make his money is tackles for loss rather than sacks. He isn't going to be designed as a pass rusher. He's just going to be a run stuffer. I like it. This is very much one of those where, like, don't do as I do as I say. Don't take defensive tackles in the second round, no matter how panicked your picks are. It's just not great value, because if a skill position guy from this area pops, then you're going to feel terrible 2 years down the line. If Jaden Blue is a starting running back in the NFL, or Isaiah Bond finds a team, then these 2 defensive tackle picks look terrible right next to him.
Yep. And again, so that's a great segue to Bond. There's a player like this in every draft where the Devy and scouting community, this guy is going to be a first-round talent. He is going to be one of those guys that we're really excited for as we approach the draft at this point in the season. It was Luther Burden for me last year, and Bond was another one of those guys in the conversation of if he came out, he'd be considered for this. Disaster of a season. Disaster of a draft. I don't think he still has a team, but he has talent for sure. There's some legal implications that's causing him to stay without a team. As soon as those get sorted out, the NFL is going to jump. And this pick is going to mean something. What it means, though, is, again, a craps roll, basically. It doesn't mean that, hey, there's a judgment and he's got to spend the next 3 years in jail. It goes to 0. Crap out. He's got to serve a 4-game suspension, then he can play. He's not going to see the field immediately anyway. Cool. Sign him, develop him, play him in preseason, let him ride the bench on the NFI list for a couple games, and then plug him in mid-season. Immediately return on investment with potential upside. No decision made this year. It's going to be deferred. Likely the same kind of situation. So there's a lot of paths towards this turning out well for Pats. That said, we've gone through the draft, didn't get drafted. We've gone through the undrafted free agents, still doesn't have a team. At some point, these guys are all doing their homework and coming to the same conclusion. It's not great. If information changes and he gets signed by the team, the assessment changes. But again, whether it's Bond this year or it was the other guy I'm thinking of is the Clemson receiver that fell because of injury issues and then went to Kansas City. I think he was on the Dolphins for a couple years. You know who I'm talking about?
I don't. I'm struggling.
There's a guy like this every year that we love as a prospect. Things don't work out for him, and we take a chance for him. And I feel like, unfortunately, recent history, it hasn't worked. Best, and I think only one I can think of where it has, is George Pickens, and he didn't even fall like this. So, I don't know. Do you have other thoughts, RJ?
No, I have no issue with it. He was going to get picked in the draft. We just figure out when we find out more about the off-field stuff, then we'll get a little bit clearer view about what he's going to do in the NFL. Talented player, just if you have a tolerance for that type of stuff and you're okay with taking the gamble, then it is what it is.
And again, he's going to go on the draft. This is probably a little higher than I think he should go, but he's going to go. But I love Pats because he's got the same dog chasing the car mentality I do sometimes. It's the wrong player for his team. He doesn't own any of his picks for next year. So the right thing to do is to use this pick for something that's going to produce points for you. Pats doesn't care, though. He just enjoys trading. He enjoys the transactional part of the game. So why not go get a guy with high upside because it's going to allow me to trade him later, or it's going to be a name that people look at later and say, oh, that's a good thing for me to buy low on, and it's going to be another conversation. So on paper, wrong player for the wrong team, but in actuality for how Pats likes to play the game, makes a lot of sense.
Yep. If anybody's going to have like a massive increase even before week 1, it's going to be him. Or potential to have a massive increase, I should say. Another one like a very, very different situation, but like a John Mechie, somebody that you're gonna have to wait. And if you are patient enough and everything works out properly, then he gains massive amounts of value.
Yep. All right, who's next? You can take this one, RJ.
Danny Stutzman, New Orleans Saints linebacker.
I don't know this guy.
Hold on, let me do some looking. No, yeah, he was a 4th round linebacker. If you don't think very highly of like a Pete Werner, maybe there's an opportunity for him to be successful. But if I'm not mistaken, they just extended Pete Werner, and Demario Davis is going to start for as long as he deems fit. I don't think anybody's taking that job from him. So definitely a player that's buried, but does have an opportunity maybe next year to at least get a look at being one of those interior linebackers.
Yeah, and I think, look, I've got exposure to this linebacking core with Jalen Ford backing up Davis as well. So obviously, I'm hoping this doesn't work out for Bills. But again, buried guy. He needs some time to work his way through the muck in front of him. Perfect for the Bills team.
Mhm.
Panthers going Jordan James at 25. Like I said, if the Niners were on their game, they'd be going a year ahead. Instead, they're kind of going year of. James makes me think a lot of Jordan Mason in terms of how he runs the ball and what kind of running back he is for the 49ers system. He reads his blocks and his gaps in front of him well. He puts his foot in the ground and explodes through the gaps well, which is what you need in the Shanahan system. His running style and his tape reminds me a lot of Mason. And Mason left this year. So ideally, a James would have come last year in the draft, not this year, but this is just how things worked out. So he's got an opportunity, but he's going to have to get over a couple of guys ahead of him for sure to even get on the field.
Yeah. I thought it was a fine pick. I don't know. I guess I overvalue backup running backs in San Francisco. Just feels like they have a willingness to use all of them. So if he makes the roster, he's good. He's going to see at least 65 touches this year.
Yeah. Why don't you take the next guy too?
Sure. I'm not trying that name. Princely. Yeah. We're good with that. Defensive end for Carolina. I know Carolina's very high on him. Or at least everybody around was quite excited when he got taken. I'm not very optimistic about him and seeing playing time. They took another defensive end around prior to him. They have two proven defensive ends or edges, outside linebackers. They have two productive ones already, and Wanham and Clowney. So Scorton's the one that's probably going to get worked in and be the rotational guy. So I don't really know if Princely has much of an opportunity in the next year or so. So, we'll hope that next year or an injury provides opportunities for him. Caroline also has Patrick Jones also, so technically he would be the third guy or the fifth guy in the rotation.
Yep. All right, you getting requested to join the chat, or you've got some trade chatter going on? Because I assume that's you and not me.
That's probably you. I haven't gotten any notifications.
Huh. All right. I didn't. Oh, it's up there. I got it. It's a notification for a planning conversation for a week. I got it. But yeah, I'm not attempting the last name either. What the other really fun part about this is we've got a run here at the end of the second round of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, round up to 8 potentially edge type guys or D line type guys at the end of the second round. Again, if you're saying, hey, I'm targeted edge here, there's 6 guys I like on the board, I can wait till the 3:15 to take that player. Not anymore. So Princely goes first. Lions jump in and take Josiah Stewart, going to the Rams. You take Olawalafemi Oladejo. Dolphins take Jack Sawyer. Texans take Cody Simon. Cardinals with TJ Sanders, who's technically a D tackle, to Buffalo. Then come back and take Jordan Birch in Arizona at the end. Dolphins comes in with Tyleik Williams. And then after Lions comes with Devin Neal as another running back, Bills come with Ashton Gillette. So, excuse me. 60 ends in that range, one running back, two defensive tackles, and a linebacker who, in that system, could very well transition to edge before the season starts. Who pegged the 226 for when that was going to happen?
I didn't anticipate it. I was a little shocked. I was a little shocked about the picks right ahead of me. Out of all of these defensive ends, there's only one with a second round draft capital associated with him. Everybody else was a third round pick or worse, at least in the defensive ends, not the defensive tackles. So that was interesting. So we had two third round defensive ends go before a second round defensive end. I can't say that I hate any of the picks. I definitely like the Devin Neal pick. That is the first running back that this particular regime is bringing in. So I can, right, because they didn't draft Kendre Miller. That was a previous regime.
Right.
So yeah, so there is a potential that they just view him as the successor to Kamara, kind of like how they were vocally trying to make Kendre that, but he could never stay healthy. So I think that's a fine pick. Let's see. The Talik Williams is an interesting one. I think he was the last of the first round defensive tackles. I don't know. It depends on what Reader looks like when he comes back. But another nose tackle, so you just have to hope that he's going to be a dominant run stopper. But what are your thoughts and opinions on some of these guys?
So two guys who jumped out to three guys of these edges. The edge you took, Oladejo, was one of the guys I had highlighted. Really liked him at the edge position. I think that's a great pick here. Really like Jack Sawyer. He was a guy I had a second round grade on, fourth round capital going to the Steelers. He just feels like a Steeler to me. His leadership, his on the field play, stepped up in the big moments, and those kind of guys from Ohio State usually play pretty well at the next level. And with what the Steelers already have, he's not going to be rushed into it. He's going to be rotational to start. But I really like what he is long term there. So I think it's a great fit for the Dolphins as well as a good value there. And then I really like Ashton Gillette. The Chiefs are really excited about him. Seems to be beyond coach speak. And they've made some major investments in their defense, and it's paid off pretty handsomely. So when the Chiefs really like a player on defense, it's worth kind of perking up and understanding a little bit more why. And Gillette seems to be one of those guys. The D tackles, yeah, like you said, it's the end of a run on the D tackles here. If you wanted a guy who went in a certain draft capital range, these are the guys to take. Makes sense. Devin Neal, again, I appreciate what Lions is doing here. This is kind of the range to do it with. I'm the pot calling the kettle black here with what I did in the second round last year, taking Will Shipley, taking Isaac Orendo, taking Dylan Laube, a bunch of backup guys who are potentially heir apparents or going to be in timeshares or things like that. Neal feels like a guy who does everything good, but Kamara is a guy who is special in a couple of those attributes. And I don't know if that's Neal. I don't honestly, I've seen some tape on him, but I don't have enough study on him to know for sure whether I really like him or not. But landing spot in New Orleans is a great landing spot to be in, right behind Kamara, who's coming up in the years. So, and like you said, it's clear Kendre Miller is not that dude. So this regime likes this guy, wants to build behind this guy. Giddy up. So this next one's a fun one because if there's a team that hates on safety anywhere before the third round in a draft, and then a team at 304 stepping up and taking a guy that, again, I don't have him here on my board, is Panthers with Kevin Winston. Look, he has his guys, and he foot in the ground, and that's my dude. Taking a safety about as early as it sounds like he would ever consider taking a safety, and doing one outside of the top two. At some point, I'm sure he'll be on it. We can ask him how he feels about Kevin Winston, what his thoughts are there. But I'll tell you, like, that's a plant your flag pick right there at 304 with Panthers and safety based off of conversations. So I'll be excited at some point to hear more about that pick.
Yep, I agree. I actually would have taken the safety at 310 if we were going safety at 304. So that was a shocking pick for me.
Yep. Texans stepping up. Chris Paul Jr. going to the Rams, and now going to tell you, this is one of those guys you kind of saw on that day 2 range. If you want a linebacker, you get a guy like Chris Paul Jr. He's going to be either developmental guy or a guy who can fight for a position in day 1. And the Rams have a lot of opportunity for that. So makes a lot of sense for Texans. And from my perspective, this is where, if you're not getting Jihad Campbell, where it makes sense to start taking linebacker. So I like this pick for Texans, kind of in both range, value, position, etc. Steelers got Trevor Etienne next. Went to the Panthers. Look, if you say you have an understanding of what the hell the Panthers are doing at running back, you're smarter than I am. Let Sanders walk. Re-up Hubbard. They drafted Brooks, and he's got a just complete monumental knee injury. Went out and got Rico Dowdle in free agency. Now drafting Trevor Etienne in that backfield with everything else. I feel like it's the same kind of thing that the Browns in real life are doing a quarterback. We don't know what the hell we're doing, so we're just going to go get as many, rolls of the dice as possible, and hopefully one of these guys hits. Hubbard did last year. He got paid for it. Now it's maybe Brooks gets healthy. Maybe there's something with Etienne. Maybe there's something with Dowdle as a placeholder. Somebody do something. Somebody win this job. Well said. So I was pestering the hell out of Bills to try and move into this range because, like I said, this is a really fun part of the draft for me because I've got 2 guys at this point, 3 guys actually, that I'm really trying to move in for. I think they're going to go in this range, and if I don't get in this range, I'm not going to get them. So I'm sending offers, including Texans future first. I'm sending consolidations of later picks. I'm sending players. I'm saying the 2024 with draft capital to move up. I'm throwing every combination I can of junk at Bills, and I'll give him credit. He said no to every single one, and this is one of the players I was trying to move up for. I really think Elick, I'm not going to get his last name right. Ayomanor, I think.
Ayomanor.
Good-sized receiver out of Stanford who just smoked Travis Hunter last year. If you look at his tape against Hunter or in Colorado in general, Elick smoked them. And if these are elite defensive prospects and this guy smoked them, come out to the combine and he blew the doors off the combine. I don't know how the hell he's still there in the 4th round of the real draft. One of those guys I feel like should have been a 3rd rounder that teams let fall through, that somebody steps up for early in the 4th. I think it was the 3rd pick of the 4th. No, it was supplemental of the 4th. But Tennessee went and got Elick. I think there's a path for him being receiver 2 there behind Ridley this year. Burks is catchable. Everyone else is catchable in that passing offense right now. And am I really going to bet against the kid from Stanford to come in and take somebody's job? No. So really like the pick, really like the value. Definitely one of those players I was targeting here.
I think it's a fantastic pick. I don't have as high of hopes of him being like a wide receiver too. They got Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley, and they're just proven vets. But But what is very important to me is the connection that he already has with Cam Ward. Because regardless of how well Cam Ward works out, that connection is very valuable to initial impressions. Terry McLaurin did a fantastic job when he already had a rapport with Dwayne Haskins, enough to establish himself as a wide receiver one in Washington. Um, so I view this in a very similar light. Just already having so many reps with their starting quarterback is going to be very good for him.
Yep. Raiders stepping in, taking Woody Marks. Again, like the talent, like the landing spot. I think Houston's again one of those spots that being right behind Joe Mixon is a great spot to be. So nice roll of dice by Raiders. Jags taking David Walker. Like I said, we just had this massive DN run, so still having some guys on the board to move in for Jags. Xavier Watts, safety, Atlanta, going to the Steelers. Bills coming back with Jalen Lane. Washington continuing to add receivers. Receivers linked to Jane Daniels is not a bad thing. And then Jags taking Jeffrey Bassa at 312, linebacker for Kansas City. Don't know as much about him, but like I said, I'm kind of doing this in runs and now at this point. I feel like at least my knowledge has faded on many of these guys here. So if you've got a couple of these guys you know a ton about and want to talk about RJ, by all means. But there's definitely a run here where I just don't have the depth of knowledge on these guys.
So far, no. I will say, like you've been saying, Woody Marks was never on any of my lists. Was very aware of who he is, but he was not a player that I even expected to get drafted in the NFL.
Yeah, I had kind of a late third on him on my grade, so I think going to the third is fine. Maybe it's half a round off or a couple picks off here in terms of where I would have taken him, but I'm not going to fault him for that. But the other guys on my list, like I said, I just didn't have on my radar for who to take here. So
the Xavier Watts pick is an insane home run. That is a starting safety in the NFL. Day one starting safety. You can't ask for like a better opportunity for somebody that you took at 310. So that's fantastic pick. Jalen Lane's a solid pick. That's one of those where like I'm not even going to try to project what I think is actually going to happen with them. They have a lot of talent at wide receiver already. Even some of their backups are very good players. So he might fade into obscurity, but I like the player and I look forward to seeing if he can, work his way through that depth chart.
Yep. All right. 313, Shamar Turner, edge for Chicago. Day 3, I think, edge. But one of the guys I had on my pre-draft list for kind of end of the third, early fourth. So I'd say in this range on the early side, but right there. Then we have our first corner come off the board for the Saints. Shade Barron going to Denver. Talk about a position to go into where I've got Pat Surtain on the other side. I've got strong defense all over the place, and I just got to come in and do my job. So, it's a nice pick of strength from a Denver defense getting stronger. And I'll tell you what, if you've got to choose between a corner in Surtain or Barron, you're probably throwing at Barron. So the way that our league scores anyway, he's going to see a lot of targets, which means he's going to see potentially a lot of picks and passes defended. So he's the kind of guy who's going to return value on the pick early on. Third round is probably as early as you want to start taking a corner. I'm surprised nobody stepped up for Barron at the end of the second. So feels like the right value in the right spot for Barron here. So I like the pick.
I think that's a fantastic pick. He might get a linebacker level of tackles. Like he's going to be the only person in the secondary that anybody's going to want to even try. Like Hufanga's not going to, like, wherever Hufanga is, they're going to avoid Surtain doesn't get a lot of looks. Brandon Jones is just as dangerous as Hufanga. So, like, they're just going to hope that whoever Barron's covering is open, and, like, every quarterback's just going to pepper him with targets.
Yep. So the next pick here, again, from a draft capital perspective, you're surprised he's still there. Again, we're in the range here. We're starting to see some picks that are taking place in what I'd call premium positions after their actual NFL draft picks. So Tesla was taken 306 by the Lions. He's taken 315 in our draft. Lions traded up for him in day 2 to get him. Look, he's in the same realm as I think it was Jack Beck, the guy that the Raiders took, where I didn't know this guy wasn't special to me pre-draft. But this is, again, I feel the right spot to be taking swings on those kind of players. So I think Tesla's a very good pick here at 315. I think Chiefs taking Savion Williams at 316, same kind of thing. Nobody knows how that receiver core is breaking out. So taking another shot at it on the cheap in the third, great way to get access to that offense. And then Saints with 2 more receiver picks. Kamir Dyke, Tennessee receiver. I don't know if he's going to play some defense too. He may be another two-way guy because I think he played some safety at Florida.
The last name's pronounced DK.
DK. And then Ty Felton, Minnesota wide receiver. Plenty of opportunity to step in there. When I was looking at projections, they've changed it since I think 2 or 3 days ago, but projections really like where Felton is and the value he can bring back there. So I think that's a great pick too. So a fun little run here of edge off the board that I think is going to be good value for Cardinals. The first corner off the board, and then a bunch of receivers where the runner continues with the next 2 picks. Torrey Horton going to the Cowboys and Dante Thornton going to the Commanders. 2 lesser-known guys. I think Horton was Montana, maybe, or Montana State. Seattle had a bunch of those guys who were kind of day 3 picks that I think people like the upside, especially with DK gone and with Kupp probably being on his last legs in Seattle. So there's definitely opportunity there if one of these guys can separate themselves. And then Thornton was in chat earlier, so I don't know as much about him, but big play guy, averaged 25 yards per reception, apparently. And you don't do that unless you're shaking free deep and catching the deep ball, which in our league makes sense. And I think was aptly described by Commanders and others as an Al Davis pick going, of course, to the Raiders.
If you picked from 315 to 324 and you took an offensive player, pat yourself on the back. These are the draft picks that we look forward to. These are the reasons why thirds are worth what they are. Every single one of these guys, fantastic pick. They all have an opportunity to provide some production for their team. Some of them are, to an extent, lesser known. Wasn't too sure about DK before this all happened. Wasn't overly fond of Felton before the landing spot. But yeah, home runs, all of these. Not all of them are going to work out, but as of right now, this is some of the best value that you can put into a 3rd round pick.
Yep. And look, I appreciate you saying 324. I'd even extend that to 325, but we'll get to that in a second. Raiders 321 taking Kyle Kennard. I'll tell you what, I look at Kyle Kennard and it's Revenge of the 5th. The day before was May the 4th be with you for Star Wars. I think Kyle could tarn. So look, taking a Jedi is always a good pick. All right, joke's not appreciated. I got you.
I mean, LA needs edge rushers, so he's definitely gonna get an opportunity. Who's there? Khalil Mack, Tooley. Mac's old. Bud Dupree's old. Yeah, there is definitely an opportunity for Kennard, at least by like the halfway point in the season, to where he's going to get looks. He's going to see the field.
Yep. Braden Swinson again was on my pre-draft list, so nice pick there. Again, I probably was looking at him more towards the fourth, but we're basically right there anyway at 322, so makes sense. My pre-draft board for my pick was Giddens first, Taj Brooks second. So Saints taking Taj Brooks right in front of me makes a lot of sense. Same as what I was saying about Marks earlier. I see Taj Brooks run. I'm not seeing the breakaway athleticism, but I'm seeing a lot of the type of runner that Joe Mixon is, of patience, wait for the holes to develop, and then hit the holes hard. He's got the size and he's got the vision to play in that offense very well. He doesn't have the breakaway speed. All good. I think he's a 4.5, 4.55 guy. So, point is, all he has to do to get to a role is beat Moss. And I think he's very possible to do that. Moss took a pay cut in the offseason already. It shouldn't be a huge ask for him to get to a role that returns value very early for Saints on this pick. And then I had the same idea with Giddens. I really like his 4.4 speed, good contact balance despite a low BMI at in the Big 12. So I get it. Not anyone can tackle, could ever play defense in the Big 12 anyway. But he goes to Indy where they overvalue athletic traits. Get that. But Jonathan Taylor has an out after the season this year. So there is an opportunity where if he just beats out Sermon, he's the spell to Jonathan Taylor, could get himself into a lead back position pretty easily in Indianapolis. So that's the kind of upside we're going for right now. That's why I went game 24. And again, I was trying to trade up for him as of the early second. So that tells you how good my values are, or how good my range and read of the draft is. Despite the fact that I have a podcast, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And then Oronde Gadsden, and then I'll open it up to you, RJ. The position, and I like Gadsden's measurables, goes to the Chargers. I think he's going to be a good size to be a good blocker there to start. That's going to let him get on the field, but he's got the receiving chops and he's got the other pieces to really step into that Chargers lead tight end role. So I think he's got the opportunity to get on the field quickly and then pay that back. And frankly, it's the kind of offense that Harbaugh wants to run. Give me a tight end that can block, and if you're blocking, I'm going to reward you with targets.
Yep. My only concern with him is I think he needs to put on some weight. (235, 240 pounds) is not the ideal size that you want in a tight end, especially in that type of an offense. But that's not a huge hurdle for him. I'm sure he can get to 250 relatively easy. The most appealing thing, and I've said this before, with like Gadsden, is I like these second generation NFL players. From an early age, they were a lot of them were taught like an NFL caliber work ethic. They understand just go in, do the job. So he's definitely somebody that's just head's going to be down, working all the time, and his number's eventually going to get called. I mean, I don't think any of us are too confident on Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin. Both have been given ample opportunities elsewhere and never really took control. So I don't really expect that to happen in LA. So for the running backs, I do want to touch on both of those. I think that's a great mindset that you have on Taj Brooks. The Bengals told us last year in the offseason that the type of running back that they wanted was Zach Moss. They wanted a larger, efficient running back out of the shotgun. They settled for a Chase Brown when Zach Moss got hurt. I can see Taj just being the starter at some point this year. He's big like Moss, and he is a very efficient runner. For the DJ Giddens part, also love that pick because we know every time that Jonathan Taylor goes down, and it's a pretty consistent thing at this point, they don't go to the exact carbon copy of Jonathan Taylor. They don't want another thumper in there. They just go to the gadget back that they could just put in for 75% of the plays. So that's exactly what's going to happen with Giddens. If Taylor comes up hurt at some point, Giddens is just going to be plugged in as like, all right, give him 18 rushing attempts and give him 7 targets this game, and then everybody else will just be used as a change of pace.
Yep, that's my view on things for sure. Back to defense though on the 326. Giants taking Maxwell Harrison. I'll tell you what though, kind of fun to see him in the draft room, literally dapping up every single person that went by. Just kind of feels like a Buffalo Bill in terms of his attitude, mentality, stuff like that. So it's a nice pick there. And again, 326 for the second corner off the board, not a bad value. Smail Moldon, again, Philly linebackers who went to Georgia, not a bad bet to make. Jack Kaiser, Jacksonville linebacker, Teddy Buchanan, Baltimore linebacker, Alfred Collins, big D tackle going to San Francisco, and then the infamous Tommy Mellott that has led to a lot of conversation here between the Cowboys and the Niners. Again, D2, I think, wide receiver that Niners is really high on based off of his measurables.
So out of that group, Kaiser could definitely find his role. Jacksonville isn't happy with any of their linebackers. Regardless of how good Devin Lloyd plays, they still find some way to try to plug Ventrell Miller in for some amount of plays, which ultimately just leads to disaster. So I could see them just, well, give the young kid some run. So that's definitely an opportunity. And I'd imagine Foyer's contract is coming close to an end or at least an out. I have no clue who this wide receiver that everybody is up in arms about. Montana State. Maybe that explains it. And also Giants, that's a home run pick. Harrison's going to be, day one starter. Not a premium position, but it always feels good when you get a starter late in the third round.
Yep, very true. And then while we've been on the podcast, Browns making the 32nd pick in the third round. Again, this is in the supplemental. Andrew Makoba, safety for the Eagles. Again, grab another safety here. I felt like after the first two things kind of blended together here, so I don't have a great read on the safety position. But Eagles have a lot of opportunity for someone to step up and step in. Just a question of, can he seize the opportunity? Can he get himself ahead of Blankenship and the other safeties that are back there? They just traded one of their key guys there in the offseason already. So he's got the chance to step up, but I think the way Philly likes to do things, he's probably going to need a year before he gets into position.
Potentially. I think he's a fantastic player. Thought this was a fantastic pick by Philadelphia. It's a good pick by Browns. Like you said, it's probably going to take a year. I think he is drastically more talented than Reed Blankenship. So, in my opinion, it's not going to take long for that to change, but I could be wrong. I think Philadelphia is relatively high on Blankenship.
Yeah, and look, it's Philly drafts here before they need them. So they got Blankenship, they've got others. McCullough doesn't need to step up and be there immediately. Work him in throughout the year. But, and Howie, they trust. That's worked out real well for him. So Eagles fans, I think, were a little perplexed. I think there were other guys that they like better. Thought safety might have been a bit of a reach here, but second round safety on the Super Bowl champs, who just completely shut down one of the league's best offenses on the biggest stage when they were trying to three-peat. So these guys know what they're doing. So there we are, up to the 3:33. Titans are on the clock. Let's see. Most of the trades that we've had in the league over the last week and then multiple podcasts have been either taxi thefts or kind of moving in or down or around for draft picks. So looking back at it since Wednesday of last week, which I think is when I stormed out of the podcast booth, but yep, is what it is. 17 trades, 18 if you, well, the taxi theft for Charlie Jones happened previously, although I'm not sure if I had covered any of the trades up to that point. So let's start at 21 here. Or even, actually, I think that was probably a post pod anyway. So we'll keep going down. Let's go to Colts giving up a future first for Justin Shorter, Nick Scourton, and Chris Abrams-Drain. Was that something we covered on the Tuesday podcast? I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
But Colts said he was moving up to try and get Scourton. I think we talked about it on the Wednesday or one of the pods. I feel like we talked about it, or maybe it was post pod and we were still going that he talked about it. But
that was post pod.
Yeah, he really liked Scourton as a first round edge. So I think for him, he just sees this as I'm getting Scourton for that pick. Obviously, Commanders has gotten a lot more competitive with his team in the offseason, and that's looked at as a playoff first right now. So get a player who went in that range for a pick that is expected to be in that range next year. Bears get to move out of a couple contracts too. So asset accumulation. Colts replaces that first by moving out of the 210. And so moving out of the Falcons first that he had acquired earlier this offseason, to everyone's surprise, for the 210 and the 213. So what I feel like is probably around edge of playoff first value for a team that I don't think anyone really expects to sniff the playoffs. So I feel like it's on the low end of the value for it, but, it's there. And again, some of the stuff we talked about of teams and stuff like that, I was a little surprised that Colts was trading future picks to move into this draft because he seemed pretty adamant that he didn't want to. So, look, draft rookie fever gets a hold of everybody. So, moved in for 210 and 213. We'll talk about those picks a little bit more a little bit later. Bills, same kind of thing. Moving in for draft capital, trading Pacheco for Zacchaeus and a future first. Zacchaeus was a $23 million contract dump. Pacheco, again, Bills are trying to acquire future capital. Makes a lot of sense.
It is a little low for value. I'm not going to criticize any of Bill's trades. He just chooses the wrong times to be active.
Yeah, that's fair. And it's the window is I think still open on Pacheco. I think they didn't sign anybody who is a holy shit worried about this guy. Steele didn't step up in that opportunity last year. Mitchell has a chance to do it, but he was injured for all of last year. So it's still Pacheco's job, but the clock is ticking on him, and it was time to move. So,
yeah. No, I like Panthers usually says it, but no, he should have sold Pacheco months ago when other people were offering far better than just a random 26 late first rounder. But we're going to say that with like half of Bill's trades is like, oh, you should have done it 3 months ago when other people were willing to pay more.
Yeah. All right, moving on up. Cardinals dumping Malik Herring and Jacob Phillips, having to give up his 516 to do it. Whatever, that pick might end up getting skipped anyway. No, I'm kidding. I love my 5th-round picks. So, Cardinals are trying to dump some of those players. Was willing to give the 516 to do it. I think I made an offer for a couple of those guys. Colts made a better offer. I'm consolidating the Raiders' backfield. I hit myself a Khalil Herbert. I pick up some contract value and drop a contract year, which is good by me, and move from the 401 up to the 324, which was good for Cowboys. So win-win. Cowboys get some much needed cap space. I grab a guy that consolidates my backfield and pick up some draft capital. Everybody goes home happy.
Yeah, I think that's a fine trade. I don't know if there were any other people that were probably going to take that Mostert deal or that contract. So I think that's a fantastic landing spot for you.
Well, again, sometimes it's just, sometimes it's a 31-person market. Sometimes it's a 1-person market.
Right. I'm just more glad to see that Cowboys found the person in the market that was willing to do it. And it didn't cost you a whole lot. Actually, you profited off of it.
Yep. Cowboys then giving up the 332 and 333. So the 2 picks that were just on the clock and are currently on the clock for Foster Moreau. Love Foster Moreau. I gave him the extension that he's on right now. Obviously, he had his issues with literally cancer, but bounced back relatively quickly. I just don't know what the hell's happening with the New Orleans tight end room or the New Orleans quarterback or a lot about New Orleans. But very cheap gamble on a player who could pay off big and be on a really nice contract for tight end. So it's a nice use of draft capital to acquire a player to be kind of a cadre there who could really pay off for Cowboys. Chiefs taking Chuck Sizzle from me in a taxi theft. Colts acquired the 210 and 213 for the Falcons' future first. Here he moves back 8 picks to pick up the 304. So, again, makes some sense as he wants to take some additional shots here. Again, we'll come back and do names with some of these picks as well, now that we know where some of these guys are going. But 8 picks to pick up a pick in the round right after it just makes sense, especially as early as the 2nd round. Let's see, a corner and a safety for 325, 330, and 331. Panthers just moved out of some picks, so wanted to pick up some new ones. It's a nice buy for you. Like, Fulton's a solid corner that should play well, especially grabbing him at that value. And then, frankly, just, hey, I'm going to get a good player at those positions. I don't know if I want to give them 4 years, and I don't know how quickly they're going to be able to get to the starting role. Let me just use 3 picks that I probably won't be able to use anyway and just go buy those things.
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. That was my mindset on it. There were no players in the secondary that I want to attach 4 years to. So why not trade 12 years worth of contracts for 5 years worth of players that are already proven and have starting jobs in the NFL?
Yep. And again, this is just, to each their own. You get the market you get when you're on the clock. Colts moves back 8 picks and picks up the 304. Niners moves back 9 picks, picks up the 406 and the 421 from Giants. I'd rather have the 304, but you get what you get when you're on the clock, I guess.
Yeah.
So tough break for Niners, but again, he was, I think, looking to pick up some more picks in this draft to pick up a few more dice rolls on his team. I think he's been pretty solid at some of those in the past. So, makes sense for what he's doing and where he is for his team. Again, Titans making a deal that I think makes a lot of sense for what, like this is the deal Lions, who had the 220, should have made. Take the 220, go get Nick Cross in the 433 for the 220. use the 207 to go get yourself a tight end instead. Like, that's the way to build out the team the way it is. Is Cross going to get expensive because he's on his last year and he was a Pro Bowler last year? Absolutely. Do you have $62 million of contract space still available in your salary cap? Yes, you do. Anyways, Titans gets him and then quickly flips him to Pats with Trey Harris and Micah McFadden and the 223 for Javon Baker, Jahan Dotson, Drizon Newton, Trenton Simpson, Julian Love, and the Falcons first. So, again, I love the constant motion that is the Patriots. He pays to acquire the Falcons first, which we think is some great value. He thinks he's going to hang on to it. 2 days later, he's willing to move it in a package that goes and gets Trey Harris, who is a receiver that I and a lot of others love, a highly valued safety. I don't know if Pat still has any trade extensions. If he did, I'm sure he used one on Cross. And then the 223 to get himself back into the range here in the draft. So everybody wins.
I don't know. It's this trade and one that's a couple more up that just hurt my fucking head. I don't get you guys sometimes. Like this is excessive. Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, Pat seems to want to consolidate himself into younger players at positions across the board, even though he doesn't have the draft capital for it. And then again, looks like he's got all players under 28 at kind of every position. He's ready to roll. He's got his trade bait up right now saying he wants 2027 draft capital. And he doesn't control his 26 draft. So, again, as much as I'm a dog chasing the car, Pat's has me beat.
No, so like I don't have an issue with what Pat's got. He might have paid us a bit more than he should have, but like that's fine. I'm gonna have more I'm gonna criticize Titan's side of this because you got a first round pick, a whole bunch of junk, and one decent player, and then you end up trading that decent player for more junk. So you have a first round pick and a pile of junk. You have players that weren't able to secure positions or spots on the field last year. You just have the worst of flyers. Like you just have what, 6 of them? That just so you got a first
track.
Yeah, so you get a first round pick and a whole bunch of cap penalties out of Trey Harris. Good job.
Yeah, well, I mean, apparently Washington's trying to get rid of Jonathan Allen, so Newton might be worth something this year. Yeah, Dodson's probably not going to make it. Baker seems to be lost in translation. Questions on whether Trent Simpson will step back into his role. Love, very expensive safety. That first is the main thing there. And if you compare those players versus Nick Ross and Micah McFadden, it's a no-brainer.
Right. And you and I may have different opinions on Simpson, but like I view Simpson as the only other half decent piece in that because he at least has a role right now. Like sure it may get smaller as as we progress through the season. He might not even be a starter by the time we get to week 1, but he at least has an opportunity. And then we got to do the second half of this for me to piss and moan more.
Groovy. Browns taxi theft of Xavier Gibson from the Cowboys, Jags 225 for 309, 330, and my 4th next year. So Panthers takes 309 with some of the stuff you got from you to move up to 225. Look, if you can execute it right and you're moving up and down and all over the place to where you want to be, excellent. Let's see. So the Trent Williams other side of it, Trent Simpson the other side of it. Trent for Zamir White, Tristan McCollum, and 333. I'm there with you. Like, come on now.
So this guy plays like let's say he only plays 50% of the snaps for Baltimore. You traded for a guy who's had bad knees since he came out in the draft and can't beat a guy named Sincere in the depth chart. I don't even know who Tristan McCollum is. He's probably worth nothing. And a comp pick.
Yep. So yeah, again, I agree. It's Zamir is nothing. 333 is again, he's on the clock with it right now, so who knows what he's going to be able to trade it for. McCollum is fighting for that safety role with a rookie they just brought in the second round. I saw this and I didn't get it. And I feel like Browns finds himself in these positions all the time. How he gets there, look, I apologize at the beginning of the draft for targeting certain teams. I'm not going to do it. But yeah. Saints tried to move using the second rounder he has from the Panthers in 26 with Eric Armstead to move him off his team. I said something like this to Saints. Broncos paid more. Makes sense.
Sometimes you get desperate to get a pick, and the only thing you have is a better pick in the year and like the year upcoming year. So you have to get creative with it. I'm probably not the type to move a second round pick for this, but who am I to talk? I just traded the 131 for like a whole bunch of seconds and thirds, so I can't be too critical of it.
Yep. Then again, you go shopping as well with your picks. I love it. Samson Ekubom and Landon Roberts for the 317. There's more competition for the edge rotation in Indy. Full agree. Samson keeps getting on the field, and when he's on the field, he gets to the quarterback.
Yep.
29 years old, league minimum contract. Like, come on now. That's worth the pick in and of itself. And Landon Roberts is going to be in the rotation for linebackers at Vegas. $12 million. He was a free agency guy. And that's kind of what you want with free agents you trade for. You don't want to have to pay draft capital for those guys. You don't want to have to pay a price for them. You want them to feel kind of more like throw-ins to the deal. And Saints needed to dump his contract. So you get the value back for what you paid for the pick, and then you get a productive player as well.
Yep. I like it. Don't get me wrong. Like, we could, by week one, both of these guys could get cut. Is that likely to happen? Probably not. But I think they're a great gamble. Landon's probably going to have a job in Las Vegas, probably a starting role, mostly because there's just not competition there. So I like that. I think that's a fine, like 1 year, $12 million deal. I think very highly of Samson. We don't really know what's ultimately going to happen with him because of the Achilles injury, but I think he's, you said it, that contract's amazing. So just that alone is worth the gamble.
Yep. Sorry, 1 second.
Oh, you're good.
All right. Cardinals dumping Rondell Moore's contract with the Jets second for 313 and 325. Again, this feels like just dumping the contract for free. I love Moore coming out, but 10.5 mil is way too expensive for his role in that offense and the way he needs to earn his way back onto the field. Projected, look, we like to shit on football guys' projections, but 3 receptions on 4 targets probably isn't too far off projection here. And if you're moving the second, like 313, 325, you're in range for what you're going to get for that second. So you're almost dumping more for basically free. So good on Cardinals for finding the right deal. Colts had been breaking down. So we basically traded the 304 for a future second because he traded the 304 for those two picks and then traded those two picks for Rondell Moore and a future second. So,
and hats off to Colts for just getting Rondale Moore as a throw-in on that. There's not going to be a lot of players that you think fondly of that just get tossed into a deal like this. But when you look at the Minnesota wide receivers, other than Addison and Jefferson, it's Naylor, Rondale Moore, Ty Felton, and Tim Jones. I don't see why Moore couldn't be the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 on that. So, he has the potential to do more than that 3 for 32, but I do think that that's probably his floor.
yeah, he has the talent. It's just a matter of it's got to work out for him.
Yeah.
This was a fun one. Levis has lost his job, the first overall pick. Got it. Talk about a guy who went from maybe a late first, second round pick for him if he dodges Cam Ward to see you later, buddy. Mayo King and Chauncey Goldston for Khalil Mack. I don't know how to feel about this one. This is just empty calories to me.
Yeah, it's 3 guys that'll be on our free agency next year. That's fine. If they're happy with it, good for them.
So here's the fun part about rookie fever. We get to a point where you want to get in so bad, you talk yourself into, okay, let me take an asset that I would never dream to trade for picks in this range in 11 of the 12 other months. But right now, it makes sense. Devin Lloyd was getting talked about as kind of a late first valuation pre-draft.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's really changed to change that. But now it's Zay Jones, the 315, the 320, and the 534 for Lloyd and a fourth round pick. Like, is this a continuation of the Jaden Daniels deal, or do we treat it as something else? I don't know. But I love what Falcons got back in this pick. Commanders really wanted to get into that range of the draft and was willing to pay up for it. I don't know.
I mean, good job on Falcons. I hope Commanders is happy with what he gets at 315 and 320. As much as we talk down about Devin Lloyd, which has been a pretty consistent thing, we just don't see him, keeping a starting job, mostly because the Jags just don't want to leave him as a starter. I definitely don't think he's worth 2/3 and some throw-ins.
Right. So again, gotta love draft season. If you're willing to actually have picks, sit on the picks, not move them, and wait till you get into range to be on the clock, you can get some pretty fun deals.
Yeah, shame on me. I got 2 defensive backs. I could add a starting linebacker.
Yeah. Then Commanders turns around and uses the 534 and a future fifth to dump the players he doesn't want from these deals on Broncos.
I just get joy out of knowing that Broncos now has Zay Jones again.
That's true.
How many times has he had him? Is this the 3rd time? 4th time?
I've lost track.
2, 3. This is the 4th time. Yeah. I mean, that's a fine dump. Depending on how Taekwon does, if he keeps his job or not, that's somebody that might be worth something, a few months down the line. Dane, similar thing. He's not so old that you can't extract some type of value. Zay, all it takes is us hearing that he's the wide receiver 3 in Arizona, and wait, he's not even in Arizona, is he? He's a free agent. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. No, he is in Arizona. Yeah. Like, if you're the tanking team that's getting dumped a whole bunch of stuff, those are like 3 players that you would love to just have for free.
Yep. Hey, and a supplemental 5th and a future 5th, they paid to dump them. Chuck Sizzle and the Broncos 3rd for $316. I wonder how much Chuck Sizzle really swayed Lions, considering he got them for free. But again, I appreciate the hustle of teams who acquire a player in taxi theft, then immediately turn around and offer them in deals for 3rds. This one, let's not pretend it's the same thing it isn't. The Broncos is going to be an early 3rd next year. He's trading a mid-3rd this year for an early 3rd next year. He's just upgrading his currency.
Yeah, that's a fine trade. That's actually pretty amusing. It's ridiculous how many times Charlie Jones is traded in our league.
Yep, and then I think it's the last piece of what Panthers got from you, the 331 to move back to the 406 and the 421. So it's a fun dance that some of these teams are doing. They're breaking down picks. They're making one of the picks. They're trading one of those picks that they break down for future picks. So they're not necessarily having to make all of the picks they're trading for, but they're allowing themselves to pick up more draft capital as we go to stay kind of connected to the draft. So Panthers is doing a really good job with that. He's going to be up again in the early 4th, and we'll see how he continues to parlay that into filling in some of the gaps on his team. All right, we are up to date with the draft. We are up to date with the trades. Titans is still on the clock. And, yeah, I think waiting to hear back from maybe a counter on a deal that he's been offered, or he's going to potentially trade it, and then we'll see what happens. But 2-hour pod, we'll probably not go again this week. We'll probably wait till next week as the draft concludes to finish up here and then kind of go through team by team. How do we feel about their drafts? But just as a preview on it, there are 3 or 4 teams that I think are absolutely killing it in terms of what they need to do. Some of them just had really good draft capital to start with, but I feel like they're getting the guys that are there at the draft position. They're extracting maximum value from the draft. I love what they're doing. So we'll have some fun stuff to talk about next week. Any closing thoughts, RJ, before we shut it down for the evening?
Nope, we're good. I thought this was fantastic.
All right. Titans, you're on the clock. Do the right thing.